So before we actually get into today's video, I want to talk to you guys about jerseyfifa.com, because as you can see, they have hooked me up with a load of fresh shirts for this year's World Cup. I've got the England home kit, the England away kit, and also a nice little retro shirt. And you can do exactly the same if you head to jerseyfifa.com using the link in the description down below. They also do the same for club football as well. The latest home shirts, away shirts, but also some really nice retro kits. If you are interested, head to the link in the description down below and use code JerseyFifa for a discount when you order. Now into the video. Hey guys, welcome back to the AJ Analysis channel, where I hope you guys are enjoying the World Cup content. Today we are back with more and a bit of a cracker of a game as Portugal beat Ghana 3-2. Now, kind of as the game was going on, I had a certain idea, a certain tone for this video that I was going to do, but then certain things happened in the game. It ended up being quite crazy, and Santos made some key changes which turned this from a really flat Portugal performance into quite a good win in the end, although there were still problems and still weaknesses in this Portugal side. But let's start off by talking about how Portugal set up initially, and on paper it's written down as a 4-4-2 diamond. It didn't necessarily completely play out like that all the time, but we'll go on to that in a bit. But in terms of from the start of the game, Ghana decided that they wanted to put a bit of pressure on Portugal. And they'd done this using a front two of Williams and Ayew, which we know when you use a front two against two centre-backs, it can make life a little bit difficult for the centre-backs to deal with that, because they are, of course, literally man-to-man. Portugal had a very, very simple solution to that. They dropped Ruben Neves in between the centre-backs, let the centre-backs split slightly wider, and this, of course, now gives you a 3 versus 2, and makes Ghana's press, or their attempt to press, null and void. Completely pointless. You now can't really press because you have less players. So what it's done is it meant that Ghana then sat off a little bit, and this set the tone for the rest of the game. Once Ghana had made that decision about 15 minutes in of we're going to sit off, let you have the ball because we can't press you, it allowed Portugal to take control and led to them being quite dominant in terms of dominating the ball, and it also meant that they then changed shape again from there. Neves then moved a little bit further forward, and then they have essentially built the ball in a 2-2 shape. However, the player that was dropping in to form this 2-2 kind of changed throughout the game. Sometimes it was Bernardo Silva dropping into this area, sometimes it was Otavio, although probably more often than not it was Bernardo Silva. This allowed Guerreiro to push really high forward down the left hand side, as we know he typically likes to do, and then Cancelo on the right hand side done something similar, but he didn't press quite as high. He didn't push as far forward, certainly not as far forward as what we used to seeing for Manchester City. And I think the reason for that was because Portugal, and we know Santos is quite, pragmatic in his approach. I think he was wary of the threat of Kudus on the counter-attack for Ghana, which is I think why we didn't see Cancelo pushing forward as much. But this was the shape, a 2-3 kind of like this, and it created a box midfield, because Otavio would push to the left-hand side in this space here, Bruno Fernandes would do the same here, João Felix was actually on the left-hand side, sorry I got that wrong there, and this was essentially how the first half of the match played out, and actually probably the first 60 minutes. Portugal dominating the ball like this. We can see their box midfield with Silva, Otavio, Neves and Fernandes, and with Portugal being so dominant in possession, we also then saw Bernardo Silva kind of moving forward into this area as well. Now, like I said, Guerreiro pushed quite high on the left-hand side, but I didn't really think he offered too much, and I think Portugal need Nuno Mendes, what he does on the ball, his athleticism and his crossing ability. I think Portugal missed that. João Felix, when he was on this left-hand side, kind of ineffective because Ghana were happy to get men around him and kind of crowd him out like this, and it left Portugal really stale in the first half, for the first 45 especially, but also probably the 60th minute as well. Just really stale. They really didn't have much. On this right-hand side, probably even worse. We know Bruno Fernandes, kind of playing in this right pocket, likes to drift inside a little bit, and like I said, Cancelo wasn't really pushing forward, so it left Portugal without much threat down this side of the pitch at all. In terms of their right wing, they really didn't have much going for them. Cancelo didn't want to push forward into these areas, and Bruno Fernandes didn't either. Ronaldo didn't particularly want to peel out wide, and it made Portugal a bit predictable, and they really played into Ghana's hand from a point of view of how Ghana wanted to defend. Ghana wanted to keep the ball, keep the centre of the pitch nice and crowded like this, and they'd done that brilliantly, especially with the strikers continuing to drop deeper, and it made it really difficult for Portugal to progress the ball vertically. Portugal couldn't progress the ball through the lines like this. They couldn't find someone like João Felix in his pockets of space. They couldn't find Ronaldo in his pockets. They couldn't find Bruno Fernandes in his pockets. And what it done, like I said, was played perfectly into Ghana's hand, because it forced Portugal outside of Ghana. So Portugal wanted to try and play through the lines inside here, but they simply couldn't. The gaps were out wide in these areas, and that was the benefit of this Ghana system. It forced Portugal to play in this little area here, where we can see we've got Bruno Fernandes, and this area here, where we've got Otavio and Bernardo Silva. this, in the first half in particular, is where Portugal spent the game, especially on this left-hand side. Kind of in this area, they've got the ball, they're kind of keeping the ball moving, but they're taking 4 or 5 touches rather than 1, 2, 3 touches. And it left them with pretty much nothing in the first half. I thought they were really poor. Ronaldo had a couple of half chances, but nothing major. And they just kind of ended up in this area here, in this pocket of space, kind of putting hopeful balls into the box, which didn't really come to much. Occasionally we saw Cancelo come forward, but again, it didn't really come to much. He didn't seem to have his best day on the ball at all, but in general, he wasn't really there to attack, it didn't seem. He was there for more defensive reasons. And like I said, for 60 minutes, I was kind of making my notes. I've literally got them on a bit of paper here. I was making these notes going, all right, Portugal stale, slow on the ball, not really doing enough, no runners off the ball. In terms of if we go back to the tactics board, João Felix wanted to come towards the ball. Where is the ball? Here it is. João Felix wanted to come towards the ball. Bernardo Silva wanted to. Bruno Fernandes wanted to. Even Ronaldo, we know, likes to come towards feet. Portugal were just really, really predictable, really slow, and it was just very easy for Ghana to stay in their shape, kind of invite Portugal into these wide areas, and then to crowd the centre of their own box. Like so, with 3 centre-backs, a couple of which are very good in the air. And it, like I said, it literally played perfectly into Ghana's hand. And my notes were all saying how negative Portugal were, and I'm sitting there thinking, I was 1-0 Portugal, I can't really do a video on this because not much happened. But then Ghana sprung into life out of nowhere. And what they done to do that was they got Kudus played much higher up the pitch. Now Kudus is a brilliant player, he's very versatile and can play in a few different positions. But at times he is one of those players where that actually is a negative thing. Because he can play very well in several different positions, he kind of gets shoehorned into areas that aren't quite his best, but he can do a job there. That was the case in this game, and when he was in these deeper areas, he wasn't very effective. However, when he was able to push further forward, like we saw in the second half, and it was almost a front 3 at times in the second half, a bit more like this sort of shape, like this, in terms of on the ball, it allowed Kudus to get into much more attacking areas, and he is a brilliant ball carrier. He really is a very, very good ball carrier, and his technical ability on the ball is brilliant. He was involved in the goal, getting into this sort of area, cutting the ball across for Ayew to put the ball into the back of the net, and that got Ghana right back in the game. However, at that point, Ghana made a very bad mistake. They bought off Kudus. And I just don't know why they done that. You just got yourself back into the game, it's 1-1, and you bring off your best player. In my opinion, your best player. You can argue it. Iñaki Williams is very good, Thomas Partey is very good. In terms of going forward, I think Kudus is their best player, and bringing him off just took out any momentum they had. They were just then getting momentum, they were just then really getting into the game. Taking him off just took that away. And at this exact second, as he came off, I made some notes on this piece of paper, and I said, I'll read it out for you. Ronaldo should play up front, which he was. They should go 4-2-3-1. Rafael Leao should come on onto the left wing. Bruno Fernandes should play as an attacking midfielder. João Felix should play on the right-hand side. Bernardo Silva should play in a double pivot alongside Carvalho. What did Portugal do? Exactly that. And what this does is it addressed the weakness that they had before. Before they had a lack of width and a lack of drive and a lack of runners. They completely addressed that issue. Let's take these 2 midfielders off here. Let's put Carvalho here in a double pivot. Bernardo Silva in a double pivot. Put João Felix on the right-hand side. Bruno Fernandes in the middle, and then Rafael Leao on the left-hand side. Now, like I said, this was just as the game was opening up. Portugal are ahead, and then Ghana pull one back. They think they're in the game, but they take off their best ball carrier, and it just opened the game up completely. But now, when the game was open, Portugal had runners off the ball. Leao was looking to get off the ball here, making runs in behind the defence, and he is just such an athlete. He is so physically athletic. He's a major threat. And then João Felix, we know his quality on the right-hand side. He was immediately able to get more involved, more on the ball, but also, key, Bruno Fernandes was now in the middle. We see it for Manchester United, we know he can play, kind of shifted to the right-hand side slightly, but he is always better when he plays in the middle. And I've got to say, these changes from Santos were literally perfect. I don't know if he was looking over my shoulder, looking at my notebook or not, but the changes were perfect. They were the exact changes that need to be made, and like I said, it gave Portugal runners off the ball. And also 1-versus-1 threat as well. Rafael Leao is a wonderful player. He has to be starting every match for Portugal. I thought that before the tournament, and I think that even more so now. I don't know exactly how long he was on the pitch, probably 15-20 minutes, but he just completely changed the game. Because he's got a ball carrying ability, and what he does, he's one of those players, I've been talking about it quite a lot recently, he's one of those players that has an ability to just break a system. Even if Ghana were set up better defensively, Leao is one of those players who's got that explosiveness to his game, that electricity, but also the quick feet, the technical ability to beat a man. It just breaks systems when you have players that can do that. Like I said, João Felix was also now much more involved on the right hand side. Bruno Fernandes was much more involved, players just in better areas. What I find interesting moving forward is, will Santos approach that next game with more attacking intent? We have no idea. Typically, he hasn't really done it in the past. He's very passive, he's very cautious, very pragmatic with his approach, and it has worked in the past. We know that Portugal won the Euros back in 2016 without winning a game in 90 minutes. So it can work. But when you have so many good players, which Portugal do, just look at that 11 that we've got on screen here, and there's more that we haven't got here. Players like Vitinha, Nuno Mendes, Diogo Dalot, wonderfully technically gifted players. For me personally, as a neutral who watches Portugal versus whoever it may be, but especially against Ghana for the enjoyment, I'm not really backing a particular team, I just want to watch good football. Surely you have to play some of these more attacking players and give them some attacking freedom. Not sure why I've got two footballs on the pitch here. But surely you've got to use these players more. They have that attacking talent. Get Rafa Leão on the pitch, he breaks the systems. Get João Felix on the ball more. Get Bruno Fernandes in the middle. Because it also gives more supply of Cristiano Ronaldo as well. Like I said, will Santos do it in the next games? We are simply going to have to wait and see. But in terms of my thoughts on this game, that's pretty much that. Santos, for me, got it wrong for 60 minutes, made a key change, and that changed the game, and Portugal suddenly looked very good. They went from looking very mid, very average, to a very threatening team with one change. And I think that shows actually an important message in football. It's never as bad as you think it is. Portugal looked very bad for 60 minutes, but just one small tweak shows how good you can be, which is why you should never write a team off, and that's why you shouldn't write Portugal off at this tournament. I think they will go far, I think they will be a threat throughout, but I just want them to play that attacking football. They've got so many good players. Young talent, experienced talent who's been there and done it, one of the best players ever. Create chances for them. Get the ball into the box, but create efficient chances for them. Like I said, we don't know if it will happen, but those are my concluding thoughts on the game. Thank you guys for watching, I hope you have enjoyed the video, and as always, I will see you in the next one.